Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
Achy breaky heart, really? Is this a new high or a new low, Dwayne? I'm not sure. We're talking to Dwayne, our producer, about the song selection. We're talking about the breakup of relationships, family law on The Law Show. I'm Zach Spencer. David Halkett is here, a partner, McQuarrie Hunter, and Sarah Morse, an associate, talking about the family law. So how many lawyers in your division there?
We have 3 lawyers to do family law in my department.
Yeah.
We have me, Sarah, and Leah Donaldson. Leah's got a little bit more experience in this than what Sarah has. She's been with the firm since, I believe, 2008, including articles. We're a full-service firm that has about 27, 28 lawyers in total.
So if you have something like as a business that needs to be evaluated, you have lawyers that can do that?
Well, lawyers
or other departments that you can count on.
Lawyers don't do the valuation. Accountants do.
Yeah.
But when we have share structures that we don't understand, we can talk to them. When we have a transaction that comes out of the family law matter, we can just send it to the north end, and the rest of our department will do it.
Do you ever get, Sarah, divorces happening where one person wants out and the other person wants to stay together?
Absolutely. I've got a few
like
of those right now.
So they're clawing on. They're like, please don't go.
Oh, they're so tricky because how do you tell someone the other person just wants out? I mean,
it takes 2 to tango, and if that's the law, actually there's a case that says that. If one party says they're separated and wants a divorce, the other can't stop it. You can delay it, but you can't stop it.
And that they usually go through? Do some people go back?
We'll see. We'll see what happens. So, yeah, I mean, if one person doesn't want to stay in a relationship, you can't force them.
Now, before the break, we talked a little bit about how you have to marry your clients, and you have to see where, you might have somebody who's a little fragile, someone's a real strong person. Now, what about ethnicity? Like, you get into cultural differences. I know in Surrey, you've got a huge Indo-Canadian community there, a Chinese-Canadian community here throughout the Lower Mainland. So how do you stick handle that? Because there's different protocols depending on the culture, right?
That is a difficult part of, both Sarah and I being Caucasian, old stock, Anglo-Saxon. It can be tricky that way because each cultural group has their own way they handle a lot of the divorces.
And you might have some that says a patriarchal system, some that's a matriarchal system, right?
And even the way some cultural groups deal with their business operations while they were married. A lot of maybe cash, handshakes. I'm a partner in this, but I'm not on paper and stuff like that. So it's a difficult one to stick handle through.
Housing as well.
Exactly.
Well, you have a lot of multi generations living in one house, right?
Where no one's on title except the parents of the parties that are separating,
so
and that gets into trust issues
and so it's an interesting thing that we have to work out. Fortunately, because we are so ethnically diverse in Surrey, it's rare that someone will come in that we haven't dealt with that cultural group before.
Sure. So
we have the experience of dealing with it that way.
And you must see on the other side, people representing the other side, a lot of the same attorneys, right?
Exactly. So, it's rare that Sarah and I will come across a family law lawyer that we haven't at least dealt with at a meeting or something like that. So we know them.
Okay, good to know. All right, when you come into a meeting for the very first time, is it better to have like a little sort of report card about where you are in your situation and come in? So what should be on that list of things that you should bring to the first meeting?
Well, when a client comes to our office, we before the first meeting, we have a long checklist that they complete outside in the waiting room. And it includes, your basic information, birth dates, when they were married, addresses, children. But also it asks what their assets are, because they have a catalog of their assets and their debts. That makes it a little bit easier to know where we're at. So you ask them, come up with a list of all your assets, your bank accounts if you can. Do you have expensive paintings? Do you have,
collectibles of some kind?
Cars and things like that.
So you want a whole list of those and the debts that are in your name, joint, those kind of things. Have a big list of that. Maybe even have an idea of what they spend in a month. What are your base expenses that are going to be covered? They have to complete a financial statement at some point anyway, but if they have that in place, at least it cuts down a lot of the initial consultation time getting the information, because we have it right in front of us. Because as I've said in previous shows, that sometimes the first 20 minutes, the client does most of the talking and stuff. So then it's if we can cut through a lot of the fact-finding and get to the actual important legal issues that we have to deal with my experience, I pretty well know within 10 to 15 minutes what the legal issues are by their talking. But, if you can cut out some of the time, you get to it a lot faster.
And I think it's an educational exercise for your clients too. For example, when I have a large part of my practice ends up being women coming out of relationships that they didn't work for part of the marriage. They may not know what their mortgage is and things like that. So it's very educational for a lot of our clients to understand what their financial picture is, because it may be very different in reality to what they thought. And there is often, as David mentioned, one of the issues is debt. You'd be surprised how many people come in and they have no idea about a debt, or they have no idea that that's included, like a CRA debt or things like that. And those are important pieces, because someone might think they have a huge amount of equity in their house, not realizing there's a massive line of credit and a debt owed to someone's parent and things of that. So very important to get all that information.
Well, you have separate, I know in one of the past shows we talked about most people now have separate bank accounts, and they pay for the common fees for the house and running but they might have a HSB credit card. They might have like they might have 6 or 8 different credit cards all maxed out, and they're just shuffling the money around every month, and you have no idea. You go to see you guys, and you're like, well, your wife or your husband, they got $40,000 in credit cards.
It's family debt. Yeah. Exactly. And we all think that in 2016 everyone knows what their spouse has in terms of assets and debts. It's amazing how many come in and don't know how much their spouse makes, what other debts that may be hiding out there. There's also issues of debts coming in from parents that all of a sudden were always gifts but become debts on separation. And
so give me an example of that.
So say, for example,
like a down payment for a house, something
like that?
Yes, exactly.
That's usually the biggest type. Yeah. Then was it a gift?
So say mom and dad give you $30,000 to put down on a house. So then what's the argument there?
Well, there's an argument that if it's a gift, then it could be excluded property that remains with you because it was a gift from the parent. But if it's a debt, both have to pay for it.
So that you could have somebody that says, well, when we got it, it was a gift, but now that we're getting divorced, it was a loan because I want you to pay half of it back, right?
Exactly. Yep. And the question then is, was it a gift to both or just to
one?
You?
Was it pre-inheritance? So it's how it's characterized.
A living will, right?
Exactly. And there's always the issue of, well, I know I have to pay half if it's an actual debt to the parent, but they're never going to make the other party pay it off.
Back.
They're going to write it off. You can't stop that. That comes up in a lot now, especially with people not being able to afford down payments on homes anymore with the cost of housing in the Lower Mainland. Parents are having to take money out to loan or gift to them to do
or pre-inherit. I'm seeing that a lot on my files is, it was intended as
advance on my inheritance.
An advance on my inheritance.
So let's just use this as a perfect example. We're going to get some free legal advice here. Everybody listen up. So what's your advice to somebody that wants to, because we're in this situation in the Lower Mainland where the housing is so expensive. Parents have some equity, say, or they've sold a house and they have some money. What is your best advice if you want to give it to your child to help them buy a condo or a house or whatever? How should you structure that?
If you want it as a gift,
or a living inheritance.
Do whatever you can in writing. Put if it's a gift
letter.
Say it was me giving money to Sarah to buy a house. Put a gift letter that says this is a gift to you, personally yourself.
There'll be no repayment required.
Exactly.
It is to you.
If it's a loan, make it a loan. If it's a loan for both, make both sign it. Do
a promissory note.
Exactly. Whatever you can on paper, do it.
Okay.
Keep it segregated. If it's inheritance money, keep it separate. Put it in an account, Sarah's inheritance account.
Don't mix it in.
Don't commingle it, because once you mingle it with other funds, you can potentially lose the excluded nature of it unless you can trace it.
So how much do I just save everybody? How much would that have cost?
Exactly. And one thing also to remember, if you are the person giving the loan to your child and there's a promissory note, there are limitation periods that if you don't, you may think it's a loan and you have both. Say it was a loan from you, Zach, to Sarah and me to buy a house, and we signed a promissory note that had no payment date or anything. It may be statute barred within 2 years, and all of a sudden then you try to collect on a loan and, oops, sorry, it's not debt anymore. So whoever's doing it, get legal advice.
So you have to actually try to pay something back, right?
certainly if the person wants to collect it later, that may be an issue.
Yeah, because I know that's the way it works with using your RRSPs to put in a down payment. You have to pay X
you have to pay a certain amount back over years.
Every year, so that's probably not a bad way to go. Well, we've just touched on a whole bunch of stuff. The checklist you should bring in, the finances is the big one, I guess, right? The legal stuff you can stick handle, but the financial elements of your relationship is very important.
Because we can't resolve anything until we know the financial situation of the families.
Well, how do you negotiate when you don't know what you're dealing with? I mean, what your house is worth, what your cars are worth. Are there loans on the cars? Are there RSPs, pensions? Is a huge one. A lot of people don't know anything about
and
the
you will have to disclose it at some point, so you might as well get the ball rolling sooner rather than later.
All right, we're talking about family law and the breakdown of a relationship and how it affects you with our guests. We've got some free advice there from David. Thank you for that. David Halkett, partner at Macquarie Hunter, and Sarah Morse, associate. Sarah kicked in as well, but you get a kickback on that. When we come back, we're going to get into the more complex issues about breakups and, struggles inside a relationship where there's maybe mental duress or physical violence and how you should work with that. When we continue next on The Law Show.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.